Hi everyone, it's Nicole from the Physio Crew, and in today's Ask Nicole question we're talking all about shoulders. My special interest area is shoulders. I live and breathe them, love everything to do with them, and although a lot of physios find them quite complex and a little bit complicated at times, I just find them really interesting, particularly because there's just so many different things that can be contributing, and it's like a game to me. It's trying to work out what it is, and I use something called a test retest style. So this question came in from somebody yesterday who was asking about shoulder dislocations, and I wanted to talk to you about that because a lot of people do think that they may have had a shoulder dislocation. There's kind of two main things with shoulder dislocations. You can have somebody who has an unstable shoulder, and that is because of either traumatic or effect, so that they've had something like an injury, so they could have had a rugby tackle, or they could have fallen from a motorbike accident, something like that, or it needs sort of excessive force for that labrum, for the joint capsule to tear. The second one is actually that some people are naturally more mobile than other people, so they have elastin within their ligaments. They have more elastin than other people, and this makes them hypermobile. So you'll often see dancers and you'll see the yoga instructor being super bendy. Sometimes it's not through stretching they've become like that, they're naturally like that. And people who are naturally flexible are drawn to things like yoga, things like dance, because they tend to be good at it. So it's kind of self-selecting. Same with ballet. So what we would be looking at first of all is to see whether it is a sort of an instability, so due to flexibility of the ligaments, or whether it's actually a tear, so whether it's through trauma. And the history is going to be key in that. So if we're looking at working out whether hypermobility is involved, we're going to be looking to see whether the person has any sort of other kind of joint dislocations, whether there's any history of hot swollen joints, or other injuries which may be related to other lax ligaments in other joints, because people with hypermobility, if they've got more elastin in those ligaments, it doesn't just affect the shoulder, it can affect lots of different things. One of the questions that we would look at for that, one of the kind of diagnostic tools, is we would look at something called a Baton score, and this is a score out of 16, which allows us to look, so we would look at how flexible your thumbs are, your elbows, whether you can get both hands flat on the floor without bending your knees. That's looking at flexibility of your back. And we also, when we're looking around the shoulder, we have to think about the different joints around the shoulder. So you've got your glenohumeral joint, which is between your humerus, which is the top bone, and your acromion, which is the kind of portion of the scapula that sits over the top. So that's your glenohumeral joint. And then we're going to be looking at the AC joint as well, which is where the acromion joins the clavicle. And that's often when people see sort of a step. So again, very common in rugby injuries, common in if you mountain biking, you fall off, or you have something which jolts. So you've got your hand sort of been put your hand on, outstretched hand, and it's been pushed upwards. Very common, unfortunately, in sort of mountain bike accidents. And so we'd be looking at acromioclavicular joint, and we'd also be looking at the glenohumeral joint and trying to see. So the first thing to say is that if it is a traumatic dislocation, you're going to know about that. A lot of people are like, I think it was dislocated, I'm not really sure. If you think it sort of partially came out, that's something different. We call that a subluxation, not a dislocation. But in my experience with rugby, when these joints dislocate, you're normally very much aware of it. If you've had a dislocation before that was traumatic and it's come out again, sometimes because the joint capsule has been injured, it can come out more easily. So sometimes people won't realise, or there won't be as much pain the second or the third time that it does that. If you're getting recurrent dislocations and that's following a traumatic episode, it needs to be investigated. They need to have a little look at it, because it's likely that you're going to need a stabilisation to make sure that you reduce the risk of any chondral, so cartilage damage, from that shoulder coming in and out all the time. If it's being caused by more hypermobility issue, then again, we want to make sure there's a big educational element. A lot of times people are kind of popping their shoulder in and out as a bit of a party trick. We don't want to do that, because you can injure the cartilage, and that can lead to early onset arthritis. So we don't want to do that at all. So if you have any questions, if you're getting shoulder pain and you're not really sure what it's coming from, maybe you're thinking, oh, maybe I have dislocated a shoulder, perhaps you've got a loved one who's had a stroke. So quite often in strokes we'll see subluxations, and you look at the sulcus test for that. So we would look at bringing the elbow into the side, seeing where there's any sort of dip around by the shoulder, and then we're looking at doing lots of strengthening for that. And that's a slightly different type of what we call a subluxation, so it's coming out a little bit but not fully, and that's because in stroke we will see nerve injury to the muscles, or a reduction in innervation to those muscles, and then they get weak, and then that's where we get the subluxation. So physio, very, very key to help people with stroke who are experiencing shoulder pain. A lot of the time people don't always think of physios as being there for people who've had strokes or people with spinal cord injuries, or these kind of more neuro-type cases. But make sure that if you have somebody who is experiencing shoulder pain, just get them to book in for a discovery call, because it's completely free, and we'll be nice and open and honest and just say, yes, this is something we help, or no, it's not. And like I said, a lot of people might not have thought of us for somebody who's at home experiencing pain because they've had a stroke in their shoulder. They might think, oh, I just got to put up with it, but they don't. There's lots of things that we can do, and there's also supports that we can provide, taping methods that we can provide to help with that. Common things to make sure that we're thinking about with the shoulder is sometimes we can get irritation of the bicep tendon, and that often is blamed for a lot, but it's often the victim, not the culprit. And so the kind of real foundation for any of these things is looking at how that rotator cuff are working together. So that's your 4 stabilizing muscles in and around the shoulder. We want to look at the integrity, and remember that we don't need MRIs for this. People are very much always wanting to have imagery. They want to have x-rays, they want to have MRIs, but what we know about these investigations is they often show false positives. So as I said before, if you're getting recurrent dislocations following trauma, absolutely we'll give you a nice neat letter, particularly if you're younger, and we'll get you sent off to see the consultant. But if you're not, let's get you started on the basics, get that rotator cuff firing properly, and help you to reduce your shoulder pain. Make sure it's not coming from your neck and your thoracic spine, which is sometimes a little bit of a red herring as well. So I hope that's been helpful. Please share with anybody that you feel it might help, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, guys. Make sure you're following us across social media. Bye now.